Yes, good afternoon and happy Sunday to you. And I believe you have a very pleasant service at a place of worship today. And I welcome you to another edition of Every Voice Matters. This is Fat Corner Page, and I am Samuel Owosha. You know how we do it on the show? We are going to look through some of the stories that make the rounds in this concluded week, and we are going to create perspective to them according to my analyst in the house in person of Dr. Gideon Ogunia. Dr. Gideon, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fine. Thank you, Samuel, for having me.
Thanks so much for joining. And before we dive into the discussion proper, let's check through some of the headlines that make the rounds in this in the just concluded week. And in the Punch newspaper, we have this week that this is coming from the UNICEF, and it says over 1.5 million Nigerian children at risk, says UNICEF. And this is in regard of the issue of flooding Nigeria is experiencing now. The other one is coming from the Punch newspaper, still on the Punch newspaper. King Charles III writes Buhari expresses sadness over devastating flood. And the last one I'll be taking from the Punch newspaper is Nigerian's future safer with APC, says Buhari. So let's get through to the Guardian newspaper. And this one says lessons of NSAS not learned 2 years on citizen style government. And the last one I'll be taking from that is floods killed 23 in Kano State. And the last, okay, let me check through some of the stories in the Premium Times newspaper. And this says 2 years on, more than 40 NSAS protesters in languish in jail. And the last newspaper I'll be checking for this edition of Every Voice Matters is the Cable newspaper. And this deals with economy. It says demand pressure pushes Naira to 751 Naira per dollar at parallel market. And the other one is investors shun Nigerians' domestic bonds over rising inflation. And that will be all I'll be taking from the headlines that make the rounds in this just concluded week. So let's dive into the discussion proper. Mr. Gideon, I hope you set for me this afternoon.
Yes.
Okay, let's check through and let's discuss about the NSAS. You know, youth stripped out across the country to mark the 2 years of that defining moment in the country's history, and that's October 2020. We learned that police officers interrupted the procession and the police shoot tear gas. That happened in the year 2020. And my question to you is that is it true that no lesson was learned from what happened in 2020? Well, the behavior of the police force, again, during the second year remembrance of what is called NSAS. Can you please give a reaction to that?
I will not say that no lesson was learned. I think the government, the young people, and every other stakeholders that were involved learned one or two lessons from the incident, from the protest. On the part of the government, they understand that a united young people, through the power of social media, through the power of digital world, can organize a protest of that scale and organize themselves and make their voices heard. On the part of the young people, I can say that the NSAS protest has metamorphosized into a movement that we see, a political movement that we see today, because I can say that most of the people that participated in the protest are now members of the obedience movement. So I will say that we have learned a lot of lessons from NSAS, and the issue is that the government has not learned enough lesson, because beyond the issue of police brutality that triggered the nationwide protest, there are a couple of other issues that actually fuel the protest, or that actually the root of the protest. Issue of growing poverty, issue of youth restiveness, issue of youth unemployment, and shrinking space for inclusive participation of young people in government, in politics, in policy making. these are the core issues behind NSAS. And I would say that the government has not learned its lessons enough to come up with solutions to some of these issues. So the government has learned some lessons about the power of united young people, about what they organize through social media, but they have not learned the lessons of how to address the core issues that gave rise to NSAS. And I can also say categorically that young people have learned one or two lessons that they actually have a voice, and they have NSAS protest has metamorphosized into a movement, and they've put their hope in a particular candidate for 2023 presidential election. So, so these are the lessons that I think that we've learned from this protest.
Exactly. Yes, but I'm so concerned about the attitude of the police force during the protest, because some of them, we had reports that they shot tear gas canisters to protesters, peaceful protesters at the toll gate there, where the scene of October 2020 scene happened. And that is what I want to punch. What is actually happening? We still have in our midst police brutality, because if we are actually remembering a day that a peaceful protest was actually organized and military men came, according to reports, and they ensure that such did not actually happen, in the sense that we had reports that many were killed during the protest, and they shot at people. And then again, during the remembrance, we're having another scenario playing out where youth were being shot at, and so many people were injured. Can you say something to that, sir?
You see, the issue with the police, although the police brutality has reduced, but police as a body, there is a structural problem there. There is a structural problem with their training, their orientation, with everything concerning Nigerian police force. So I don't expect much change in their attitudes, in their behaviors, in the way they engage citizens. I don't expect much changes until when we have the change in the structure of the police, the change in the way they are trained, the change in the way they are given orientation. So in their standard rule of engagement. So if we don't have changes in those things, you wouldn't expect much change in the behaviors, in the attitudes, in the way the police conduct themselves. So in that aspect, we've not had much changes. But I like I said, what we need to do is to get right leadership for Nigeria that can actually come up with reforms that will address the structural issues with the Nigerian police force. So until when we get to that stage, we shouldn't expect much from the Nigerian police force.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Gideon. Now let's move to the next talking point, and that is concerning the issue of the flood we are actually experiencing. Nigeria is experiencing its worst flooding in over a decade now, and over 1.4 million people have been displaced, while 500 have been reported dead and thousands have been injured. Dr. Gideon, I'll need your reaction to this. This is actually quite becoming overwhelming, and we can't deal it again. I even have a friend of mine that is actually affected with this issue of displacement and flood in the other part there, and she was unable to even go to school. You know that, thank God, ASU has called off the strike. She was unable to leave her place to come back to school because of the issue of flood, and this has been happening over the years, and it seems nothing is being done about this. Please, can you say something?
You see,
government.
First and foremost, let me say that let me commiserate with the people that are affected with this flood flood situation. It's really, really disheartening. But there is something that baffles me, and that is, I saw the tweet of the Nigerian Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, Sadia Umar Farouk, and he blamed the scale of the disaster on the failure by some branches of government other than our own to take action. He is the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs in Nigeria. So our ministry is directly responsible for coordinating action to prevent this kind of disaster that we have. But she has shifted the blame to state governors, to local governments. In her tweet, she said there was enough warning and information about the 2022 flood, but states, local governments, and communities appear not to take it. This is what she tweeted. And we've seen this irresponsiveness of government. We've seen the crisis it's creating in our communities, in our nation. And I think that the people who have to take their destiny in their hand. We cannot continue like this. Where a minister that's supposed to coordinate actions on preventing a disaster is coming out to say, to tweet that, look, we have enough money, but state government, local government, they did not do anything. So the question is, what did our ministry do to prevent this disaster? Even if the disaster cannot be prevented, it has happened, What is NEMA doing right now? What is our ministry doing right now to help the victims of this disaster? And we also have to note that there is issue of global warming. There is issue of climate change. There is issue of climate change that is also contributing to this kind of disaster. And Nigerians have to look out for the manifestos of people that are contesting election for 2023, election. What is their stand on climate change? I heard one presidential aspirant that was saying that it's like a church rat or like a poison communion or something like that. And which shows that he has zero understanding of what is going on and how to prevent this kind of crisis. So Nigerians have to be very, very intentional and serious about the people they want to bring to government. We've seen the irresponsible remarks from the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, and we've seen that they continue to shift blames instead of taking responsibility, instead of taking action to address some of the challenges that are facing the country. So this, I will give it a political coloration that Nigerians have to be serious about the people they want to vote into power, people that have understanding of contemporary issues that are facing the world and are facing our country.
Sure. Exactly. Thanks so much, Dr. Gideon, for that. Everything still boils down to getting a good governance in place and things will work. And okay, let's take this last story before we call it a day on the show today. And that is coming from the President Muhammadu Buhari. And then he says that Nigeria's future safer with APC, says Buhari. So how will you react to this? When this such statement is coming?
If President Buhari is saying Nigerian future is safer with APC, I mean, maybe he has another definition for safety and security, because the evidence that we have is contrary to what Buhari is saying. And I think Nigerians have to make sure that they don't measure safety and security from the barometer of Buhari. They have to look at their own realities, what is going on in their communities. On July 5, 2022, Kuje prison in the Federal Capital Territory was bombed and attacked by gunmen. And ISWAP, is it ISWAP or ISWAP? I don't know what they call them, claim responsibility for that attack. I'm not sure of how many of them have been arrested up to now. On June 5, 2022, gunmen attack a church in Owo, causing about 40 deaths. We have we still have sit at home on Mondays in southeast region of the country, and we've seen violence that happen when people don't stay at home on that Monday. We've seen kidnappings, we've seen all manners of criminalities in almost all the states of the Federation, Akwa Ibom, Rivers, Imo, Anambra, Delta, Edo, Ebonyi. You have heightened insecurity, and you have the threats of Boko Haram that is still coming from the northwest. You've seen the issue of flood that is ongoing, and you see the kind of response that the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs is giving to that disaster. You've seen the issue of rail track being bombed and people taken from the train, kidnapped from the train, and they spent almost a year before they were released. So you've seen all these issues, and if somebody is telling you, look, I've done my best and Nigerian future is safe with APC, people have to be careful, and they have to understand that, look, this man, in his own estimate, he has done his best. He's the best for Nigeria. So these are the questions that I think people need to ask themselves, and they need to be serious about what they want to do with this kind of information. That's what I can say about this issue.
Okay, thanks so much, Dr. Gideon, for joining me on this episode today. And I appreciate your responses, and I believe that our listeners will do well to take something good out of it. And I thank all our listeners from far and near, and keep sharing our content, and keep liking and engaging our content as we give you more of informative content, even during this political era. Thanks for joining Every Voice Matters, and I believe that you will join again next week. I am Samuel Owo Osho. Thank you. Bye for now.